Collier blasted WNBA leadership in her exit interview on Tuesday, accusing League Commissioner Kathy Engelbert of being, quote, negligent.
Picture this. Sold-out arenas, fans screaming at the top of their lungs, Caitlin Clark breaking the internet with every three-pointer, and the WNBA riding the biggest wave of success it's ever seen.
Any questions? All right. So first of all, I'd like to congratulate the Mercury for advancing to the finals. And I want to be clear, this conversation is not about winning or losing. It's about something much bigger. The real threat to our league isn't money. It isn't.
Now imagine all of that gone, vanished, just like that. Because right now, as you're watching this video, the WNBA is staring down the barrel of something that could shatter everything they've built. October 31st. That's the date circled in blood red ink on every calendar in women's basketball.
It isn't ratings or even missed calls or even physical play. It's the lack of accountability from the league office. Since I've been in the league, you've heard the constant concerns about officiating, and it has now reached levels of inconsistency that plague our sport.
That's the day the league's collective bargaining agreement expires. And if the players and owners can't figure this out, we're talking about the first work stoppage in WNBA.
And Nafisha Collier is a star in the WNBA. This is not some role player. This is her, okay?
History. A lockout. Games canceled. Stadiums dark. The momentum of an entire generation evaporating into thin air.
What you did was provide fodder to the belief that everything Nafisha Collier said was the absolute truth, nothing but.
Isn't some distant threat anymore. This is happening right now. And what comes next could either launch the WNBA into a new golden era or send it crashing back to the dark days.
Including remarks made earlier this week by Nafisha Collier. First, let me repeat this. You saw it in my statement, but I have the utmost respect for.
When people wondered if women's professional basketball would even survive. So buckle up, because we're about to dive deep into the most critical moment in WNBA history. Let's rewind for just a second.
How to calibrate the line for legal and illegal contact to ensure player safety and exciting competition.
And understand how we got here. Because the irony of this situation is almost too much to handle. The WNBA just wrapped up its most successful season ever. We're talking record-breaking viewership numbers that made executives.
And we want to make sure there's no interruption, but obviously that'll be up to the players and our owners, but, I think we're on a path to get.
At ESPN, do a double take. Arenas that used to be half empty, packed to the rafters. Corporate sponsors who barely gave the league a second glance. Now they're fighting each other to throw money at WNBA partnerships. And it all happened because of a perfect storm of talent, timing.
A leader of an organization, how are you not close with the stars of the organization? And the dilemma right now in the WNBA is that the star players, the Asias, the Stewies, the Sabrinas, the Caitlin Clarks, they don't have a good enough relationship with the leader. The Nafisas, they don't have a good enough relationship with Kathy Engelbert. She came in and she wants all the credit.
And cultural shift. Caitlin Clark brought millions of new eyeballs to the league. Angel Reese became a household name. The rookies weren't just good, they were generational. Social media exploded with WNBA content. Suddenly, women's basketball wasn't just something people respected from a distance. It was must-watch entertainment. But here's where things get complicated.
Credit for everything, but there's not enough communication between the leader and between the players. And now you got to revolt. Now everybody in the W is like, hold on, we want you up out of there. But I think the best thing I heard is, how can you negotiate if you don't communicate? And the dilemma is there's not even a negotiation, a quality negotiation right now between the players and between the W, because there's not quality communication right now between the players and between.
While fans were celebrating this breakthrough moment behind closed doors, tension was building to a breaking point. See, the current collective bargaining agreement, the contract that governs how the league operates and how players get paid, was set to expire in 2026. But the players? They weren't interested in waiting that long. In October 2024, the WNBA Players Association dropped a bomb. They opted out of the CBA early.
You should resign. You need to resign. Period. Reason I say that, doggy, is because when a player, any player, but especially one of that magnitude,
moving the deadline up to October 31st, 2025. Translation? They looked at the explosion of interest, the skyrocketing franchise valuations, and the corporate money flooding in, and they said, we want our cut now. And honestly, can you blame them? Let's talk numbers for a second, because this is where your jaw is going to hit the floor. Back in 2021, the Las Vegas Aces were purchased for $2 million. $2 million. Fast forward to today, and that same franchise is valued at $310 million.
Attacks you publicly like that. That weak-ass statement Commissioner Engelbert gave is not good enough. And I'm going to say it. It was a weak-ass statement. Could you imagine somebody?
New York Liberty bought for somewhere between 10 and 14 million after sitting on the market forever because nobody wanted them. Now, $450 million. We're not talking about modest growth here. We're talking about franchise values that increased by 15,000% in some cases. 15,000%. And while owners are becoming wildly wealthy on paper, the maximum salary a WNBA player can make right now is $249.
Directing comments and criticisms at you. Taking conversations they've had with you directly and telling the world what you said. And did you see that statement Commissioner Engelbert gave? If that, I mean, you...
$244. Now don't get me wrong, that's not pocket change. But compare that to NBA rookies who are pulling in $10, $20, $30 million a year. The gap isn't just big, it's insulting. This brings us to what the players are actually fighting for, and it's not just about bigger paychecks. Sure, money matters, but the core of this entire negotiation is something more fundamental, revenue sharing that actually works. Under the current CBA, player salaries are essentially predetermined with tiny 3%.
She basically provided no defense of herself. I mean, I don't have the statement right directly in front of me, y'all.
Mischaracterization.
A mischaracterization.
She was disheartened.
I'm disheartened that the mischaracterization.
Annual raises locked in. There's technically a mechanism for salaries to increase based on revenue. But here's the kicker. It was designed before COVID-19 devastated the sports world. The pandemic wiped out the 2020 season, limited attendance in 2021, and basically made those revenue targets impossible to hit. So even though the league has exploded in popularity and profitability over the past 2 years, the salary structure stayed frozen in time. The players are demanding something different, something revolutionary for the WNBA.
$16 million deal because of the platform the WNBA gave her. It is the single dumbest thing ever said by a sports commissioner.
They want what the NBA has, what the NFL has, what every major professional sports league has, a percentage of revenue that grows as the business grows. It's not rocket science. If the league makes more money, players make more money. Simple, fair, logical. And according to WNBPA, President Nneka Ogwumike, the league's latest offer doesn't cut it. Sure, the owners are proposing to quadruple the maximum salary to over $1 million. On the surface, that sounds amazing. But here's what Ogwumike is saying. It's the same broken system, just with bigger numbers attached. The percentage of revenue going to players, basically staying the same. So while owners are watching their franchise values shoot to the moon, players would still be getting the same slice of a much, much bigger pie. And this frustration reached a boiling point during the WNBA All-Star Weekend in July. If you were watching, you saw it. Before the All-Star Game, players walked onto the court wearing black T-shirts with a message that echoed across social media and sports news everywhere. Pay us what you owe us. It was bold. It was defiant. It was impossible to ignore. The players had just come out of a meeting with Commissioner Kathy Engelbert and league ownership representatives in Indianapolis, and they were not happy. They called it a missed opportunity. Translation? The two sides are nowhere close to agreement, and the players were done being quiet about it. Fans in the arena started chanting in support. Social media lit up. The message was clear. We're not backing down. But here's where it got messy. Even WNBA legend Candace Parker, someone who's fought for player rights her entire career, called out the optics. She pointed out that the players wore those protest shirts and then proceeded to give minimal effort during the actual All-Star game itself. It looked bad. The counter-argument from players like Aaliyah Boston, they're exhausted. The WNBA season is brutal. The schedule is packed, and they didn't need to risk injury in an exhibition game when they're already giving everything in games that matter. Fair point. But the moment highlighted the tricky position players are in. They need public support to pressure the league, but they also can't afford to alienate the fans who just fell in love with the product. Meanwhile, Commissioner Kathy Engelbert has been playing it cool, at least publicly. She's been all smiles, throwing out optimistic sound bites about reaching a fair deal and keeping things positive. But make no mistake, behind those carefully crafted statements, ownership is playing hardball. They're not just worried about money. They're worried about control. Specifically, they want something called prioritization, which is just a fancy way of saying, if you play in the WNBA, we come first. Not overseas leagues. Not the 3-on-3 unrivaled league that Breanna Stewart and Nafisa Collier founded. Not anything else. Us. And here's where things get spicy. Stewart and Collier, two of the biggest stars in the league and co-founders of Unrivaled, are also on the WNBPA's executive committee. They're literally negotiating the CBA while also running a competing basketball league. Now, both of them insist there's no conflict of interest, but come on. How could there not be? Collier literally wore an unrivaled shirt during the televised All-Star Game roster draft. The message was clear. We have options. We're not trapped anymore. And that's the thing that's really changed this time around. In previous CBA negotiations, players had limited leverage. The league was struggling. Franchise values were stagnant. The threat of folding entirely was real. If players pushed too hard, they risked killing the golden goose. But now the WNBA is thriving. Expansion teams in Portland and Toronto are starting play in 2026 with plans to reach 18 teams by 2030. Corporate sponsors are lined up around the block. TV deals are getting richer. Owners have way more to lose now than they did 5 years ago, and the players know it. So what happens if they don't reach a deal by October 31st? Let's walk through the nightmare scenario. First, you get an off-season lockout. That means players can't use team facilities to train. Free agency gets frozen. The expansion draft for Portland and Toronto gets delayed. Already, that's a mess. But if negotiations drag on, if they go into December, January, February without resolution, then we're talking about missing actual games in the 2026 season. And that's when things get catastrophic. New fans who just discovered the league because of Caitlin Clark, they'll move on to something else. Corporate sponsors who just sign deals, they'll have clauses to pull out or reduce payments. Media partners who bid big on broadcasting rights, they'll be furious. And all that momentum, all that cultural relevance the WNBA just earned, gone. Nneka Ogwumike has been very clear about this. She says nobody wants a lockout. The players aren't advocating for a work stoppage, but they're also not going to cave just to avoid one. They want this deal done right, even if it takes longer than anyone would like. And that's the poker game we're watching play out in real time. Who blinks first? Owners who just watch their investment value skyrocket and don't want to risk losing it all? Or players who finally have leverage and aren't willing to wait another decade for fair treatment? Let's zoom out for a second, because this fight is about so much more than the WNBA. This is a defining moment for women's sports, period. The National Women's Soccer League just signed a groundbreaking CBA with real revenue sharing. Women's hockey is trying to build sustainable professional leagues. Every athlete in every women's sport is watching what happens here. If WNBA players win meaningful revenue sharing, it sets a precedent. It proves that women athletes can and should share in the financial success they create. But if they lose, if they get forced into accepting the same old system with slightly bigger numbers, it sends a message that women's sports, no matter how popular they get, will always be treated as secondary. And here's the economic question that nobody can quite answer. Would IS fair? Yes. Franchise valuations are astronomical. But are those valuations based on actual revenue and profit, Or are they based on speculation about future growth? The NBA subsidized WNBA losses for years. Is that debt paid off now? Or does the league still owe the NBA for keeping them afloat? The owners argue they took all the risk during the lean years. The players argue they built the product that's now exploding in value. Both sides have a point. This isn't a simple good guys versus bad guys story. It's a complicated negotiation about how to split a pie that's growing faster than anyone expected. So what are the possible outcomes here? Best case scenario, they reach a deal before October 31st. Players get real revenue sharing tied to league growth. Owners get prioritization commitments that protect their investment. Expansion moves forward. Everyone celebrates. And the 2026 season starts on time with even more momentum than before. That's the dream. But there's also compromised territory. Maybe negotiations extend into November or December like they did back in 2020. Maybe they agree to graduated revenue sharing that increases over time rather than all at once. Maybe there's flexibility on prioritization with some exceptions for international play and national team commitments. Both sides claim partial victory. Neither is thrilled, but they move forward. And then there's the nightmare, a lockout that extends through winter into spring. Games get canceled. The 2026 season is gutted or doesn't happen at all. New fans disappear. Sponsors pull back. All those rookie stars, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Cameron Brink, lose a year of their prime. Portland and Toronto sit in limbo. And the relationships between players and ownership get so damaged that it takes years to repair the trust. That's the scenario that keeps everyone awake at night. Here's the wild card that nobody's talking about enough. What if Caitlin Clark speaks out? She's been relatively quiet on the CBA stuff, focusing on basketball, but her voice carries more weight than anyone else's right now. One statement from her could shift public pressure dramatically. Could Stewart and Collier, with their dual roles, actually broker some kind of peace? Will corporate sponsors threaten to pull deals if games get canceled, forcing both sides to compromise? Does the NBA step in to protect their investment and push for resolution? The clock is ticking. October 30, FIRST isn't some distant date anymore. It's right around the corner. And the WNBA is sitting at the most critical crossroads in its 28-year history. On one side, you have a path to legitimacy, sustainability, and respect. Fair revenue sharing, happy players, continued growth, and a league that finally matches the quality of basketball with the quality of business practices. On the other side, you have conflict, mistrust, canceled games, and a potentially catastrophic loss of momentum just when everything was finally coming together. This is the paradox of success. The WNBA's CBA crisis is happening precisely because the league finally made it. This negotiation isn't about survival anymore. It's about prosperity. It's about whether the women who make this product great will actually share in the wealth they're creating. And it's about whether ownership can see past short-term control and recognize that paying players fairly isn't just morally right, it's good business. So here's what we know for certain. October 31st is coming. Both sides are dug in. The stakes have never been higher. And what happens in the next few weeks will ripple through women's professional sports for decades. Will the WNBA seize this moment and build something historic? Or will they let internal conflict destroy the momentum an entire generation worked to create? We're about to find out. And trust me, the whole world is watching.